I'm a 22-year-old woman who inherited my childhood home after my mom passed away from a sudden stroke last year at 47. I've come to terms with her death. My parents divorced when I was young, and I spent time with both of them, but I was always closer to my mom. My dad, now 50, was often too busy with work or his relationships to spend much time with me. As long as I had my mom, I was okay. When I turned 18 and started college, my dad moved to Houston, so we only saw each other on holidays. 2 years ago, he introduced us to his girlfriend, Julia, and her 2 daughters, 18 and 16. During Christmas, we got along well, and Julia was always kind to me, though her daughters were shy. After my mom passed, she left me the house. She had planned everything carefully in her will, and after college, I decided to move in and find a job nearby. My dad wasn't happy about this, since the house had been where they lived when they were married, but my mom kept it after the divorce. My dad had no right to it, and I thought it was unfair for him to be upset about not getting it back. He went back to Houston after the funeral, and I lived alone in the house. 6 months ago, my dad told me he was engaged to Julia and wanted to get married here. He asked if they could stay with me in the house before the wedding, and I agreed. I didn't mind them moving in since I got along with Julia, and my dad promised to share the bills. I enjoyed their company and didn't want to be alone anymore. 2 weeks ago, right before the wedding, my dad asked if they could stay permanently. I was surprised but understood his reason. I almost agreed, but I hesitated because of his past behavior about the house. I wanted time to think and told him I'd let him know after the wedding. He wasn't happy but didn't push me. After the wedding, they were supposed to stay a few more days before leaving, but then they unexpectedly went on their honeymoon without telling me. I was shocked. When I reached Julia, she said it was a mistake and they'd be back soon, but she was rude and told me not to overreact, saying I wasn't a child anymore and needed to accept my dad had a new family. I was furious and decided not to call my dad. I didn't want them living with me anymore. I packed up their things as quickly as I could and left them outside. Yesterday, when they came back from their honeymoon, I was at work when my dad and Julia found their things outside. I had changed the locks so they couldn't get back in. My dad was furious when he called me. He called me a brat and said I was overreacting, claiming they hadn't done anything wrong. I told him to take their stuff and leave, and if they were still here when I got back, I'd call the police. He cursed and hung up, and I had to get back to work. When I came home, their things were gone. I thought it was over, but then my dad called around midnight. Julia apologized, saying she didn't want us to be on bad terms. I told her to leave me alone. Her apology felt fake, like she was only trying to fix things because they couldn't live with me anymore. If she truly regretted it, she would have apologized earlier. My dad wasn't sorry either. He tried to guilt-trip me, saying I was heartless and that he wanted to feel closer to my mom by living in the house. He said Julia's outburst was just a bad moment, and even her kids missed me. But I didn't believe him. I knew my dad had been eyeing this house since the divorce, and after seeing Julia's true behavior, I didn't want to risk them living here. I told him they should go back to their home. He cried, calling me selfish and saying I was ruining his happiness. He even claimed my mom would be disappointed in me, but I stood my ground. I wasn't going to let them move in after how they treated me. Later, I shared my story online, and people's comments helped me realize I made the right decision. Some were rude, but they made me see things clearly. My dad doesn't deserve to live here, and Julia's behavior showed me they weren't the right people for me. It was nice at first, but their true sides came out once I said I needed time to think. They tried to push me around, but I'm stronger than that. I'd rather be alone than with people like them. I still miss my mom, and I wanted a family to support me, but these people weren't it. I'm glad I figured it out before it was too late. My dad has kept calling and texting, hoping for another chance, but they don't deserve it. I feel bad for treating him this way, but he never made much effort with me. Now that I'm making my own decisions, he doesn't get to complain. A few days ago, my dad told me he lost his job and spent all his money on the wedding and honeymoon. He asked to stay with me, but I said no. Julia quit her job too, and now they're broke. My dad thought I'd let them stay, but that's not my problem. I politely told him no, but he took it as mockery and said I'd regret it. I didn't respond because I knew anything I said would be twisted. It's better to let him figure it out on his own. Today, my dad and Julia announced they were leaving the city, but not without making a scene. They texted me to say Julia's ex-boyfriend was paying for their trip back home to see his daughters. I don't know the full story, but I'm just glad they're leaving. This is the last I'll deal with them. I realize that while I might still feel lonely sometimes, I'm better off without them. I have good friends, a steady job, and my own house. Thanks to my mom. That's enough for me. If I ever need help, I know I can count on my friends.